Hey, what is going on, guys? This is Jason with Jadren Aquatics. Thanks for hanging out with me in the fish room again today. Well, today we are doing a video on breeding Red Eye Tetras. But before we get into it, let me tell you a little bit about when you're breeding fish. A lot of it has to do with the type of water that you have. I have angelfish and they absolutely just breed like crazy, and it's because of the natural city water I have. They just seem to love it. Whereas guppies, some of my guppies really struggle. So just know that sometimes it's difficult because of the water conditions that you're in. But the best thing that you can do with almost anything that you're breeding is to use rainwater. So if you've got the ability to collect some rainwater, that's what you want to use. You'll notice in some of my videos, I'll use RO water instead of rainwater, but I would always rather use rainwater than I would use RO water. So let's go ahead and let's move over there and let's check out the Red Eye Tetra. All right, so you are ready to breed some Red Eye Tetras. What's the first thing you need to do? Well, let's talk a little bit about the Red Eye Tetra. These guys come from South America. They're like many other tetras. These guys are quite a bit bigger than many of the ones that you see, like the neons. And so the first thing we need to do is we need to determine, how do we know the difference between a male and a female? And so that you know, the female, we've got one right here in front of us. The female is much rounder than the males, and they're usually about half an inch or so bigger. Here's a good comparison of the two. There's a male right there. The male is a lot more streamlined and longer than the female. So, but these things have got to be about a year old or more before you can actually start breeding them, or where you can actually start being able to tell them apart. And so you want to set up a breeding tank, because these guys are like the other tetras, where they just spawn in the tank column and the eggs just fall. So they just scatter their eggs. And so whenever they normally spawn in an aquarium like this, they're obviously just going to be eaten up by every single thing that's in the tank. So you're going to have to set up a breeding tank only for these guys. And so we'll get that set up here in a second so you can see exactly what that looks like. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to pick out a female, and we're probably going to pick out two males. But just know, the more that you put in the breeding tank, the better chance that you have of success. I like to use, for my tetras, I like to use just a small 4-gallon aquarium. It makes it a lot easier to do water changes and a lot easier to control the water parameters. And they're not going to be in there for very long. So I'm not going to put too many of these guys in there because they're just too big. So let's go ahead and let's move over to the breeding aquarium so you guys can see what the setup looks like. Okay, so one of the very first things that we want to do when we're getting ready to set up our breeding tank is we need to soften the water, and we need to get some tannins in the water. And there's multiple ways you can do that. One of the easiest ways is just to take a bunch of oak leaves and crush them up and put them in there and let them decay. They'll get the water with a lot of tannins pretty quickly, but it'll take a little bit for the pH to drop. But a quicker way to do that is to actually run peat through some type of filter. As you can see here, this is the type of peat that I use. I'll link this down below. This is a Sera brand, super peat. You don't want to use the peat that you just find at like a Lowe's or a Home Depot, that stuff that's actually made for the garden, because that usually has other type of ingredients in it. This stuff is specifically made just for the aquarium hobby. So this is the stuff that I like to use. And then the next thing we use along with that is a box filter. Yeah, an old school box filter. These things are actually kind of hard to find. I'll link this down below. You can find these on Amazon. Since we're using the small 5-gallon aquarium, I'm using one of these ones that are really, really small. And then we're going to use the filter floss to go along with it. So we're going to go ahead and pack that filter floss in there, and then we're going to pack that peat in there, get that lid back on there, and take this thing over to the tank and get it set up and let it run for a while. Okay, so the next thing that we want to do is, since I'm using a small aquarium, it's a little bit easier to do it this way. I'm going to take this plastic canvas material. I'll link this down below where you guys can actually buy this stuff from. It's just simple, just a plastic stuff that's mesh. It comes in different size grids, but it really doesn't matter as long as the adult fish don't have the ability to get through there, because this is what's going to block them from getting to the eggs. We're going to take this thing and we're going to cut it almost the exact size of the bottom of the tank. That way the eggs will just drop right through it. So let's go ahead and let's go over to the tank so we can see exactly what it looks like when we got it all set up. Okay, so here we have the tank completely set up now. You can see what I ended up doing is I ended up choosing a female and 2 males. As you can see, the female is the one that is just so much bigger than the other ones. The reason that I went ahead and chose 2 males is just in case one of them didn't do a very good job of fertilizing the eggs, maybe the other one will do a better job. The more that you put in there, the more eggs and the more fertilized eggs you're going to get. So if you were doing this on a bigger setup in a 10-gallon aquarium and you want to have 20 or so in there, you can. But again, this is just set on a 5-gallon aquarium, so we're just going to go for these 3 for now. And as you look back there in the back, we've got a normal sponge filter in there. That's a sponge filter that's been running on another tank for a long time. That way we know this water is completely cycled. The water that's actually in the tank, I actually took this water from the tank that these fish were in. That way it wouldn't be any type of stress on them whatsoever. And then back here in the back we have the box filter I was telling you about, that's halfway full with the peat, and then it's got the other stuff there at the top. And so we've got this thing bubbling now and going. It's been going for a few minutes, so you can see the water is already starting to get a little bit brown from the tannins. That's exactly what we want to happen. And also at the top of the water, I put some hornwort at the top because sometimes Red Eye Tetras have been known to like to spawn up at the top in the plants, and so that the eggs just fall down. So I went ahead and put that in there for them. I'm also going to put a lid on these things because these things are the worst jumping fish that I have in my entire fish room. I found at least 2 of them dead in other situations where they just jumped out. And so if you look down here at the bottom, you can see what I was talking about. Again, I've cut this grid out so that it's the exact size of the aquarium. And what I've done is I've just put some rocks here in the corner just to keep it, you know, off the bottom, so that whenever we want to come over here each day and look, we can easily look at the bottom and see if there are any eggs in it. And I've got those rocks in all 4 corners. Now again, you could do something fancier that looked nicer, but again, this is just a quick and easy breeding tank setup. So we're gonna go ahead and leave this thing like this, and then what we're gonna do in a few hours, I'm going to change out about 40 or 50% of this water, and I'm gonna actually put rainwater in there, because right now it's just currently the water that was in the tank. That way we want to make the fish believe that a rain has happened, and that triggers their natural instincts to want to lay eggs whenever they think that a rain has actually happened. And then if they don't spawn after the first time, the next day we'll do a much bigger water change, 75% at least, and we'll put almost all rainwater in here to try to get them to trigger again to spawn. Alright, as you guys can look in here and see underneath this plastic mat that I have in here, this thing is absolutely just loaded with eggs. And this is only the second day. The plan was to do a full water change and completely change out till we had all rainwater, but with only a 50% change in water, in using rainwater, and then just running not even 24 hours yet with the peat moss in here. These guys have already gone nuts and dropped about a jillion eggs. So now we need to work on getting all these out of here. All right, there you go. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you learned a little something. Just know if it doesn't work the first time, you want to try and try again and begin to change things up. Maybe you need to take the males and separate them from the females for a couple of weeks and begin to fatten them up on their own and then put them back together. There's just a bunch of different things that you want to try if it doesn't always work the first time. Maybe the pairs that you have just won't mate. Maybe they just will not come together. You just don't ever know. There's so many other factors involved when breeding fish. Please leave a comment down below if you've got any questions or comments. So thanks again, guys, and God bless.